Well, this is rather disappointing. If you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, Sharing the Outdoors, and you follow our videos, you probably know that 2 years ago, I was hunting some public land during the rut, and I had a real close encounter with a good-looking 2.5-year-old 6-point following a scrape line that I didn't get a shot on. Well, I was going to get out and hunt him the following fall, but with everything that went down last fall, I was unable to hunt at all the entire season. So I came back out here to do some summer scouting this year, and I got back out here and I find this huge tree has fallen right across the trail that deer was using, pretty much causing briars to grow up in here and eliminating any chance of a shot from my tree. So I'm going to see if I can't find another tree nearby, figure out his pattern, and I'm going to do some more summer scouting here. So why don't you join me? I'll try to offer some tips that can help you find a good spot for early season and scout some deer in the middle of all this summer salad. So summer scouting can be tough. It's hot, there's a lot of biting insects out, and the forest has grown up into what appears to be an impenetrable wall of brush. Not the most pleasant conditions to head out and scout for deer. But if you're like me and you hunt public land and you like to get back into the timber, away from the crowds on the edge of the soybean field, you have to get in here and start looking. It can be kind of tough to find deer sign when you've got this massive amount of second growth coming up. It's hard to spot tracks and see droppings on the ground. But we're going to get back in here, walk right back into this thick brush, and see what we can find. So I was coming across through that waist-high brush, and as I made my way through the woods, I came upon this dried stream bed. Now it's muddy and somewhat open. Deer will often use areas like this as travel roads. And when I look in the mud here, I see a few deer tracks. But I'm not going to set up right on this dry stream bed here because there's probably better spots. I'm just getting into it. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to pick up this track and start following it and see where it leads me. Alright, so as I was following the creek bed down, I came upon this area. Now this area is looking a little better because you can see right down in here there's more tracks, and not only are there more tracks, but they're going in two different directions. They're going up and down this trail and back and forth across the mud. So that means this is a place where there's a cross trail coming through the woods. Even though I can't see it in the brush, I know that deer are going north, south, east, and west at this spot. As I was following that dry creek bed down from the trail crossing, I found the trail became more defined through the woods and the thick stuff, and it wound up here. When I followed it out, you can see the ground here is torn up where deer have been crossing this dry creek bed into this field behind me. Now when I walked out into the field, there were several deer out there starting to feed. It's a little later in the day. They were on their feet coming out to get a bite to eat, and they took off back into the woods behind me. So that tells me I need another trip up here because, one, I went the wrong way. I don't want to hunt on the edge of the feeding field. I'm going to want to be hunting on bedding. And two, I need to find another way in because I can't come across the feeding field to enter in the evening. Alright, so it's mid-morning. The next day, I was out here yesterday scouting this spot, and I took the trail out to the feeding field and bumped those deer, so I left. I didn't want to bump any more deer. Now they should be bedded down, and I should have quite a few hours to scout around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to backtrack down that trail in here to try to find where they're bedding. Deer need two things, It's always been said they need food and they need cover to bed in. And I've found I like to hunt back in the timber, closer to the bed. That gives you an advantage, not only if you want to hunt the mornings, hunt them returning to bed, but also in the evenings, because when you're back in this thick stuff, you're more likely to see deer earlier in the evening getting up to move to food if you're closer to where they bed. So I like to get back in here a ways. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this trail and start following it back into the forest. It's kind of hard to see, but as I walk along, I'm going to be trying to do what the deer do. They take the course of least resistance, and if you look down through the thick brush here, you can see that it's thicker over here and over there, but it's more open here. And I found that deer tend to follow the more open area, and that's turning out to be true. As I move along, I'm following the loose cover as opposed to the thicker stuff, and I am finding deer tracks and droppings. So I'm going to keep moving down through here, see what I can find. So I was moving along down that trail, and it started getting a little thicker, and I noticed where it got real thick on both sides there, and the tracks went right through a small opening. And as I went through that opening, I kind of lost the trail. That led me to this spot here. As I made my way to the right and into the opening, looking ahead, I noticed a spot in the brush that was more open than the right or left-hand side of the trail. And as I walked up on that, I found an area that's been heavily tracked through, like the deer are coming through there quite a bit. So I followed that down into this spot, and it's a fallen tree that's still somewhat flooded, and it's obvious that the deer are cutting to the right to avoid the fallen tree and the obstruction here. Now this woodland is fairly flat and open, but even still an area like this can act as a funnel to move deer through a centralized area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a tree right in here, maybe to climb up in early in the season. I'm not right back on top of the bed, so I won't be disturbing them too much. And before the pressure picks up in the fall, this may be an area to set up. Now I'm thinking of this as a morning spot because all the tracks seem to be heading back into the thicker cover. So I've got two things I should never be without. One is my GPS, so I can find my way back to this exact location, and two is a rangefinder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk right around in this immediate vicinity and try to find a tree that I can get a shot from at this trail at a comfortable range. This one looks good for an early season hunt before a lot of pressure gets in on top of these deer. That 22, 23 yards from that trail where it comes around that stump. And I'm going to get in here and try this one right after the season opens before the deer get bumped around real bad and way back in the thick cover. I'm going to mark this tree and continue heading back towards the bedding area. Now I also have to plan an approach to get in here in the morning because I don't really want to walk through that field over there where the deer are feeding a couple hours before the sun comes up and bump the deer. They'll be out there or laying right along the edge of their feeding field if they haven't been disturbed too much before they move back into the thicker cover for security early season. Now what I'm going to do is walk around, and as I was walking around about 20 yards behind that tree I picked, there's this open, seasonally flooded area. It's pretty muddy, but it should offer a quiet way in the morning without walking through the feeding field. So what I'm going to do is when I get done scouting, I'm going to come right back here, follow this out, and see where it goes, and use this as my entry. So after I set up that early season tree up there on that fallen tree funnel, I kept moving down the trail. It was fairly easy to follow. The tracks were dried in the mud, but they were still visible. And it ended up here at this seemingly impenetrable wall of brush, and the trail just abruptly stops. It's all overgrown. This is good though, because this is the type of place those deer are going to head when the pressure starts hitting, when they're looking for security cover. But how do you track a deer through here? Well, start by moving back and forth along the brush line and look for an area that isn't as thick. It seems like you may be able to squeeze through there. Did you see it? Remember, a deer is thin, much thinner than you are. And looks like he's squeezing right through here. Let's see what's on the other side. Yep. Here's the other side of the trail here. I've got old droppings here, and the trail's starting to pick up. That trail comes through that little opening in the brush by that big tree, immediately hooks left. You can tell from the tracks that he's moving and cutting right back through here. What makes that better is that about 10 minutes walk that way is back where that tree fell, where I was hunting that 6 point. We're almost back in there deep, and I know that's a good spot because I've seen a fairly nice buck back in there. So maybe I'm starting to learn his pattern 2 years later. We're going to head on back and see what we can find. Well, there you go. This trail comes right down in here. These dead branches here are the top of that fallen tree where I had that encounter with the 6 point. If I walk around through this thick brush, and I'm not really all that surprised to find that I wound up right back here where we started yesterday, where I was disappointed to find this tree had fallen through the trail where I had my encounter with that 6 point buck 2 years ago. Right now I'm going to back out of here though, because things have changed. This tree's across this trail and it doesn't seem to head down through this part of the woods anymore. When I got in there, it hooked right around the top of the tree and headed back into the thick cover in the swamp back through here. I was also finding a lot of droppings coming down that trail, which indicates to me I'm getting pretty close to where the deer bed. Deer tend to void in the evening very soon after they stand up and start moving down the trail to feed. So I don't want to get back there and bump around. I'm still got the same clothes I had on yesterday. Another thing preseason scouting does for you is it makes you aware of what you are out of. I'm out of laundry soap, I'm out of hunter's deodorant, so gives you a chance to take inventory and prepare for the upcoming season, find out what you need to get. I also feel that I'll have better luck finding a scrape and rub line back in here when this cover dies back and the deer get antsy mid-October. I'll be back in here looking for that rub line then. If it's not the 6 point I saw, it's probably another good deer, because deer are using this area for a reason. It's back in here, not a lot of hunting pressure comes in this far, and this offers a nearby food source. It's thick and it keeps them safe. Even if it's not that 6 point, if he was taken or he vacated the area, you find a buck pattern like this, there's usually another one, another good one that will move in behind the deer and take that territory over for the same reasons that other one was there. It's keeping him alive. Now, I am going to hunt those setups I found on the way in back here. It might give me a shot at a doe heading out to feed in the evening. I might see this buck back here, but that's not far enough back here that I feel I'll really bump the pattern, even if I do take a deer on that trail. Moving forward, Michael and I are going to be out here scouting a couple spots on a different part of this area where we can hunt together as the season opens. We want to go down and get some snake heads. We struck out last time we were down there, and we got to put some perch on ice. So make sure you subscribe to us. here at Sharing the Outdoors on YouTube. Keep up with everything that's going on. You can get some more scouting tips, maybe join us on a fishing trip, or you can catch all our current content at www.camochairproductions.com.